British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is heading to Beijing seeking warmer ties with China. It comes right after the UK approved the building of a new, huge Chinese embassy in central London. Britain has also recently learned that China has been hacking into the phones of senior aides to several previous prime ministers. Joining us now to discuss is human rights activist Benedict Rogers. He's the co-founder and chair of Hong Kong Watch, senior director at Fortify Rights, and author of the book, The China Nexus. Ben, good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. So let's talk about this. Considering the Chinese regime's record on human rights, which you're well aware of, what topics do you hope and should we expect the Prime Minister to address in his meeting with the Chinese leader?
Well, I hope very much that he will address robustly a range of human rights concerns. I think the priority should be demanding the release of Jimmy Lai, the 78-year-old media entrepreneur in Hong Kong who's been in jail for the last 5 years. Jimmy Lai, of course, is a British citizen, so Keir Starmer has a particular responsibility to seek Jimmy Lai's release. But he should also raise, for example, the issues of the genocide of the Uyghurs, the crackdown in Tibet, the recent escalating crackdown on churches across China, the imprisonment of human rights defenders and dissidents, the issue of forced organ harvesting and persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. There's a long list that he should raise. I've actually set out in two articles published in the last 24 hours specifically what he should raise. And 19 human rights organizations wrote to the Prime Minister last week, setting out in detail what he should raise. But I think if there is one priority, it ought to be the case of Jimmy Lai.
Okay, so if he raises those issues, what leverage would he actually have over the situation?
Well, I think his hand is somewhat weakened, both by the decision to approve the Chinese mega embassy last week, but also by his failure to make the visit conditional on, for example, the release of Jimmy Lai. I think he would have been in a much stronger position if he had said, I will not come to China unless you release Jimmy Lai. He didn't take that opportunity. But nevertheless, presumably the two sides will be discussing various trade deals. And again, I think he could use leverage there by saying he won't sign trade deals unless there is the release of Jimmy Lai and significant improvements in the various human rights, grave human rights issues that I just outlined.
So, Ben, as you're aware, Starmer is the first prime minister to visit China in about 8 years. Why haven't previous prime ministers done so? And what is Starmer's intention here?
Well, I think previous prime ministers haven't done so partly because there was definitely a cooling in the relationship in recent years for a variety of reasons, particularly China's total breach of the Sino-British joint declaration over Hong Kong, the complete dismantling of Hong Kong's promised freedoms. Also, of course, we had the COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath, and we had various episodes of Chinese espionage. So relations really deteriorated, and that's why there hasn't been a prime ministerial visit. Why is he going now? Well, he seems to have been determined since he entered office to reset the relationship, to prioritize the economic relationship. And my concern is that he is giving in too much too early and really compromising our values and our security.
So are you saying that this could actually backfire for him, for the UK?
Well, I think if he comes back with very little results, if he doesn't come back with the release of Jimmy Lai, if he doesn't come back with some progress or assurances of progress on the different concerns, and also it's quite likely that in the great scheme of things, whatever trade deals he does come back with will not amount to as much as he may hope. So it could well backfire unless he achieves something that will surprise us.
Okay, so you brought up this earlier. China maintains strict control over religious freedom. The persecution of followers of the spiritual practice Falun Gong continues in China. to this day, with many having fled to countries like the UK. So if you could pinpoint to just one thing, what should the main message be that you hope Starmer will be delivering to Xi Jinping, for those in the UK with family members still facing China in this persecution and sometimes even torture?
Well, I think the main message should be by Keir Starmer to China should be our countries cannot have an improved relationship, let alone a normal relationship, whilst China continues firstly to spy on us in the UK, to threaten people in the UK through transnational repression, to threaten Taiwan increasingly, but also while it continues to severely repress people across China, whether it's Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, bloggers, lawyers, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and particularly while it continues the really shocking and barbaric practice of forced organ harvesting. You cannot have a normal relationship with a regime that commits a crime against humanity like that. So he ought to deliver that clear message that if China wants a better relationship with us, it needs to stop these barbaric practices.
So Ben, just one final thing, and the UK is following after Canada's state visit to Beijing. Some seeing this as diverting away from reliance on the US and even seeing China potentially as a more stable partner. What do you think about that? Is there any risks to this that you see?
I think there are huge risks. This is a time of admittedly increased tensions among the Western alliance, differences between the British government and the US administration on some policy issues. We had some unfortunate remarks by President Trump about our troops last week, which caused a lot of concern in the UK. But those are not reasons to weaken our alliance with our closest ally, the United States, and to suggest that we would be with a more reliable relationship with a communist dictatorship that is threatening our democracies, rather than a country that we share, even if we have differences, we share democratic values of freedom and human rights and the rule of law. To suggest that is not only crazy, but extremely dangerous. And so I hope that Keir Starmer will not move in that direction. I'm not saying he shouldn't be talking to China. I think we have to keep communications with the Chinese regime open, but he certainly shouldn't be, and other Western leaders shouldn't be moving away from our closest and strongest allies, both economically, militarily, and in terms of our values.
Right. Very good points there, Ben. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.